Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I thought I'd get this filmed as it's been raining all day, in some cases quite hard, and now it's brightened up and the weather's unpredictable. I don't like filming in the rain because of the noise level, so I thought I'd get this filmed in this break, as it's not a long video anyway. We're going to have a look at the Cattleya Alliance ideas for selecting for the project orchids. So same routine as before. I will film 7 and then you can tell me in the comments which one you like the least to be included. I don't mean you dislike it as a plant, I just mean as a project plant, in other words a plant to follow through the year at regular intervals. So it's the plant you think is least suitable for that purpose, not not that you dislike the plant. I mean, they're all orchids at the end of the day. So again, same routine, you must be getting used to it by now. Some of these have been, I'll say by popular demand, even though it might only be a few people that actually said they'd like this particular one in the selection. It's the fact that they bothered to ask, and even though there may not be many of them, you know, I'm happy with that. So these will be the 7. I've got my list. And this is the first one, and this is a BLC, so that's a Laelia Cattleya, and probably it isn't, because the Brassivola element may well have been reclassified, and possibly the Laelia bit has as well. But that's the name I got it as, and it's Golden Mul Orient, and this one came from Jeff's. So this is brand new for me, literally. One of the sets that came from Jeff's. These will be the newest plants I own, so I know very little about them. I've got no growing experience to look back over, so we'll be learning as we go along together. Now this one arrived with virtually no roots. It's been mounted and strapped on nicely, and at this point in time there's no sign of any sheaths or anything like that, and no sign of any brand new growths, although I can see some of the growths are newer than others. But it's just starting to show some root activity right at the very base. It's just a couple of little green roots starting to show. We'll see how that one goes. It'll be nice to follow a plant, you know, from a rival basically, because I have only just got it, and I selected it at Jeff's because it looked like quite a healthy plant, apart from the fact it didn't have many roots. But as we know with Cattleya types, you can recover a plant quite satisfactorily that's got no roots at all. Now this has a distinct Brassivola look about it. It's got the very, very slim pseudobulbs with the single leaf, so it looks like there's a lot of Brassivola in here, and they are normally quite vigorous. Yeah, so I would imagine this is going to grow quite well. Growing points, i.e. where new growths will come, will probably be here, where the latest root's coming, here, and possibly here. So we may have 3 or 4 new growing points on that as it gets going, which isn't going to be immediately. It'll probably start growing some roots and then start shooting out when the longer days come. But we shall see. So that's plant number 1, is Blc Golden Mul Orient. Right, plant number 2 is Laelia purpurata variety striata. Now the other Laelia purpurata, the Atropurpurea, was actually in the project orchids last time round, and although it might be quite nice to follow it again, I thought let's go for the other one. Now whereas the Atropurpurea refused to bloom, but we did eventually get it to bloom, this one was bought in bloom. And I took a risk with it and actually cut the rhizome to get the pieces in the pot, because it was basically one long straight rhizome and it wouldn't go in. So I took the risk and actually cut it. The risk being that one piece obviously had next to no roots, the back end of the plant. But basically we have got some new roots growing, and this piece here with the leaf that's been hacked off, that was the one that was in bloom, I think, I'm not sure. But that's got a nice new growth starting with at least one new root underneath it. And then the other piece that was led in the other way round, so they're heading in opposite directions. This one's got roots growing and another nice new growth. So we'll follow that one through. If it's as bad as the Purpurata, it might be a bit troublesome getting it to bloom, but I think it should be okay. Despite having cut it, you have to bear in mind the pieces only have 3 pseudobulbs. One of the pieces only has 2. Yeah? And that was the risk. Will that be strong enough to push out a new growth? Well, a poorly shaped pseudobulb, for whatever reason, with a chopped off leaf, another good strong leaf, reasonable pseudobulb, and now a little new growth. So the hope for that back end is in this new growth getting up to full size and producing a reasonable root system, because there isn't much there. Under this piece, which has got the 3 pseudobulbs on, which are all the right size and 3 good leaves and all bloomed as a matter of interest, there were some roots under there, not many but some, and that's got the stronger of the new growths. So it'll be interesting to see what those 2 new growths do and what sort of root systems they produce, and are either of them going to get big enough and strong enough to actually bloom again. So that's that one. That'll be plant number 2. Right, plant number 3, quite a long name this time. What we've actually got is Apotenara, and this is Cat Green Power, spelt with a K, the cat bit, and it's big triple G, and it's one that I liked a lot a long time ago and never got round to getting. At least I don't think I did. I might have done. And when I saw it, I thought, right, we'll have a go at that and see what we can do with it. Large green blooms, basically, with some frilly bits. Not a brilliant plant when I got it, I would say. And it is a bit disconcerting that this pseudobulb here has got this amount of black on it. Now this is dry black, but nonetheless it's a problem, so we'll have to see what happens here. Not so sure that this front lead on this plant is happy. Not so sure. So unpredictable what it's going to do next. And if you follow the lead through, oldest pseudobulb's got a yellowing leaf, the next one hasn't got a leaf, then the next one's got a normal leaf. The one after that's got a normal leaf with a sheath that didn't bloom. Yeah, and then it's got a leafless pseudobulb near the front end. And then it's got the largest pseudobulb, but it's had difficulties in its life. This is the bit I'm not happy with. It's this black streak down the pseudobulb. But it did have some roots, not many. Yeah. Been wired into a holy clay pot to keep it rigid, and new growths are going to come from the front here somewhere. Difficult to say where, because it might even come out here, but probably there, and that should be followed by some more roots. So the growth pattern of this is going to be a bit unpredictable, so that'll be interesting again to follow where it puts out its new growths, and do they grow properly, it or they actually grow properly and produce a decent sized pseudobulb with a good leaf on the top and a set of roots underneath, and possibly bloom, because this one hasn't been cut in any shape or form, so it's still got its net stored energy, which includes some reasonable pseudobulbs. So we'll have to wait and see what that one does if it's selected. So that's plant number 3. Right, plant number 4 has been subject to a reclassification that I don't actually care about. It's bad enough trying to work out what the hell this one is. It's basically a Recchara Francis Fox. Very attractive blooming orchid that, again, I saw on other people's channels and thought, I'll have some of that if ever I see one. And finally saw one. So that's why it was bought. It's a healthy plant, it's got good leaves on all the pseudobulbs, and it currently has a maturing new growth that is capable of blooming, but I've got no guarantees. Now the reclassification of this has got some strange set of letters on the front, followed by Cattleya. So it's obviously got some Cattleya in it, and it's obviously got some Brassivola in it. And if that's its latest reclassification, it must be one of the true Brassivolas, not the Brassivolas that have been reclassified to something else. It's all good fun, this, isn't it? Actually, I'm finding it quite stupid rather than fun. But I'll have a giggle about it. But at the end of the day, here, it's going to be what I said it is. And we shall see whether this latest growth will actually bloom. It's growing some roots. All these roots weren't here when I got it. So we'll have to see what happens next. The likelihood is that another new growth will form here, but I don't know how long we're going to have to wait. Do you see what I mean? I don't believe this plant has bloomed yet. No. This looks like the growth that came closest to blooming, but that is not the remains of a flower spike. So I don't think this has bloomed yet. So that's the goal then, is to actually get it to bloom. The blooms are absolutely stunning, so it's got to be worth trying. But I've read in several places that it's notoriously difficult to get to bloom, and a lot of people have said theirs never bloomed for them, but they don't know why. Chances are, depending on which Brassivola is tucked away in there, it's going to be a light issue. Most of the Brassivolas like highlight. So we shall see. But yeah, there is a potential for a spike to be produced on this one. But we may have to wait for an additional one. And I don't know how long we'll have to wait for that to start growing. It depends. So that's that one. Now this one's a bit of a nuisance because in my notes I've actually got dates to show that it's bloomed, but I haven't got a picture. So I don't know whether it was in bloom when I got it and I wasn't quick enough to actually get the camera out, or what happened there. But anyway, now this one's also been reclassified, and I've decided to run with the reclassification, even though it's a word that looks odd. So Cattleya. It was Dear Laelia. So obviously the Laelia bit got reclassified to a Cattleya, as many of them have, and the deer, whatever that stood for, is now a Cowlo something or other. Oh, this is good fun, isn't it? I think it just tries to make people struggle. Anyway, it's Chantilly lace Twinkle. That's the actual plant name. That's the important bit. And this is a good, healthy looking plant. Lovely leaves. I was going to say bifoliate, but it's not, is it? If you look at it, some of the pseudobulbs have got 4 leaves. So there's obviously something in there that's not Laelia or Cattleya. Yeah, and that's going to be the bit that I'd say is dominant. Now, what we've got here is the potential for a spike on this growth here. What we've also got there is some very pale coloured leaves on that growth. Now, it is a new growth, but that could be that that's getting a little bit too much light, which is unusual for a Cattleya type. But like I said, the Cattleya part of it was once Laelia. Most Laelias are good light sort of things. But what is this other bit? If this other bit is a lower light type orchid and it's dominant, which it looks like it might be because of the number of leaves on the bulbs. So that's right up against the glass at the moment. That could be a bit too much for it, but it could also be the reason why it looks like it's going to bloom. But we've got leads going off in several directions here. This is a new growth here. That could even possibly push a spike up, but it's also growing in this direction, which is what this little one is. So it's a nice looking plant. This is the oldest little pseudobulb down here, slightly yellowing leaves, but that's a very small pseudobulb. So this looks like it may have been grown on from a seedling, and somebody's already taken the back bit off, and it could have even been me when I potted this up. Since it went in here, it's grown roots. So it's got an active root system, currently growing in many directions. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to follow. Now I must have got that because I like the blooms. Yeah, which makes me think it was actually in bloom when I got it, but failed to take a picture. So there we go, that was plant number 5, I believe. You'll have pop-ups for all the names and numbers anyway, so you can join in and make your choices. I still think it's a relatively strange concept to ask people to make the choice of those we don't want, but you can see the process of elimination. We start with 7 and I want to end up with 5. So that's that one, and it's a shame I can't show you the blooms because I'm pretty sure they were rather nice. Right, well, so much for it brightening up. It's starting to get really dark now. I mean, we are heading towards the end of the day, but it's clouding over with heavy clouds again. So I'm losing my light quickly. Now, this camera will film in almost darkness, as you've seen before, but it won't allow me to get close in low light. So anyway, this one is, I've forgotten. That's not its name. I've forgotten. It must be. Now I've got a conflict here because on the label it says Epicattleya on the tag, and yet in the notes I wrote down of the ones we're going to choose from, I've got it as Epicattleya. I will correct that in the pop-up one way or the other. But this is Volcano Trick Orange Fire, and it's another one that I'd been after for some time. Just the Volcano Trick, but the actual variety Orange Fire gives it that extra oomph, that, you know, the depth of colour and everything. Now when this was mounted up, virtually no roots, and there was a little part of the plant at the back end, which is this little bit here, that we decided to keep, or I decided to keep. There was no we. Next new growth should come from either here or here, and we've got a very poor, if non-existent, root system on this. There were some old, tired, shrivelly looking roots on it, and so far it's not showing any signs of pushing out new ones. So at the moment it's effectively doing nothing. What it will hopefully will do is respond to the longer days and the better temperatures when we get them. They're not too far away. You know, I don't know what we must be up to about 8.5 hours by now. By the end of this month it's 9.25, and then end of February-ish, you know, we'll be up to the 11 hours, which is the magic kickoff sort of length of day. But anyway, so this one was included because of its stunning blooms and the fact that we're starting it almost from scratch. I haven't had it long, certainly hasn't bloomed for me, and we have no sign of new growths and no sign of roots. So it's currently sitting there sulking, I would suggest. And it wouldn't have sulked if it hadn't been buried in compacted moss and lost its roots in the first place, would it? I wish people would stop doing that. It's all right if you come from a very hot environment and you're growing your plants outside, because that moss would dry incredibly quickly. So it wouldn't do the damage. But once they're imported into the EU and then on to places like the UK, they don't do so well. And they dump their flipping roots. And then you've just got to start, you know, you end up buying a rescue plant. We've all done it, I'm sure, me included. You know, you just have to take your chance. Unless you can get there and pick the flipping thing up, take it out of the pot and say, oi, this is no way to treat a Cattleya. Put it back in the pot, put it back on the shelf and say, you keep it. Still, we can't do that when I think this one may have come from Germany. Well, originally it probably came from the Far East, but not at the moment. Anyway, so that's that one. Oh, I really am losing my light now. Well, and the day, and what it is now, heading towards 3:30. Actually, it's 4 o'clock. So, yeah, I could expect it to be almost dark. That means the clock in the lounge on the mantelpiece, the batteries have gone and it's stopped, because I'm sure it said 3 o'clock last time I looked. Anyway, I've decided to include this. It was requested, despite the fact I'm going to have a hell of a job saying it every single time I film it. Now, it's listed, or it's going in as a Sophronitis, but that will have been reclassified as Cattleya, no doubt. And it's Blc... I'm going to have to get Pedunculata, Brevi pedunculata. There we go. Now I'm going to go away and say it 27 times, and then next time I film it, I'll have forgotten it again, so why bother? It's growing on one of these clay things, which I don't like, but in this case, it can stay there, because this is a cool grower. So it may appreciate the evaporative cooling mechanism that will go on when this clay thing is wetted in the warmer weather. It has an active root system. Several of these roots have green tips. I haven't got a clue whether that's reached blooming size yet, or whether it's going to have to grow several more bulbs before that happens. But in this poor light you probably can't see, but there on the end of my finger is what I hope is a new growth, not a new root. We got new roots. There's quite a few good roots on here. I want new growth, so I'm hoping that's what that is. In which case it's going to have two directions of growth, because off to the left there is not where I'd have expected it to grow. I'd have expected it to grow from down here somewhere. So yeah, a miniature, and that is its size. The largest pseudo bulbs on there are probably as big as they're ever going to get. The Sophronitis in the hybridizing programs of the past, that go back an awful long way, this is some of the real old crosses, were introduced into the mix. So wherever you see SLC or SC or SL, that's the S bit, that's the Sophronitis bit, and it introduces compactness and can influence colours, because the majority of the Sophronitis are red or deep orange, so they can affect coloration as well. They don't necessarily introduce direct red into the coloration unless the other elements in the hybrid were already yellow or orange or red, in which case it could deepen them. But they were used to cross things that were purple. Well, they didn't suddenly come out with a red lip. But what they did do is introduce compactness, so some of the giants were reduced in size in their hybrid offspring. So there we go, another new one. This is a hitchhiker in effect, because this came in the Squirter order. In the I ordered 4 and 8 turned up, and this was one of the extra 4, so a gift from an anonymous person who wanted to wish me a happy 70th birthday, which is appreciated, and that's part of the reason I've chosen it. Let's follow it through for a year as a thank you. Okay, so those are the plants. It's up to you to choose the 2, or you only choose 1. I will add them up and find the pair, but you just choose the one you'd least like to see followed through for the year. You don't have to say why, but it's quite nice if you do. And quite a few people in the previous 2 lots of selections have said why they've chosen the ones to drop. So up to you, but I just need the numbers really, and we'll go from there. And then the interesting lot, well for me, we'll be trying to select 7 in the other category, which might end up being 8 to come down to 6. We shall see. Anyway, let's get this one out of the way first, and before it gets completely dark out here. See, the rain's coming down again. It's just that's what it's going to be like. But there's a large portion of the country under quite a bit of snow at the moment. It's good in a way, because the majority of the people should be looking out of their windows or going out in their gardens, appreciating how pretty the snow is, and not bellyaching that they've got to travel in it, because they're not supposed to be travelling anywhere. Stay at home. We won't get any snow down here on the south coast, fat chance of that. We very rarely do. Anyway, so those are the Cattleya types, and they are all in fact Cattleya types. There's a bit of epidendrum in one of them, but apart from that, they're all Cattleya types. And we'll go from there. I was going to include this one, but basically we've already seen it do its thing over the last year. It was bought in bloom, it grew new growths, took to its mount, and it's blooming again. It's just going to repeat now. It's just going to do the same thing. And it'll still get filmed anyway. So there we go. Those are the choices. See you next time.